All right. I believe we're live, Zane, after that wonderful countdown.
Very excited.
And yeah, so love to be able to dig in with you today on CRO. We'll give people just a moment to join. Maybe while, we're getting the stream warmed up here, just love to get an intro from you. Like, what type of stuff do you do? And how do you approach, building for the web?
Well, I work with our CRO team and our AEO team, answer engine optimization, and our UX team. And mostly feel like we're going to be talking about this a lot actually. Build for the web by trying to sort of get as much information as I can about all the different sort of data coming in that we can measure to make decisions about how to connect like user journeys basically from marketing and discovery all the way through conversions.
Cool. Well, we've worked together for a little while. Love for you to just give a background. Like, this isn't just something that you went to school for or whatever. I mean, in some ways, we're making up what we do. What's your background?
Yeah. Infamously, I took a class on, I don't even remember what the name of the class is now. Anyway, I went to Georgia Tech for industrial design, actually. So designing like objects and things like that. And had a little studio next to your studio. And so that's how we met. And then decided to come over and join Edgar Allan. You guys were doing some really exciting stuff at the time, still are. And yeah, sort of work my way through all the different elements of things we were working on at the time. So worked in Webflow, worked in design, started working in UX, and just sort of helped build a team, a UX team from there, and then now CRO and AEO.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been wild to see how much different we are as a company. And like, for context, when Zane and I met, we had offices next to one another at this place called the Goat Farm. Really wonderful, sort of bohemian, hole in the wall, like literal sort of pocket of Atlanta. And yeah, actually met Jamie there, like, and then now, we're totally remote and doing similar but different stuff. Like, we were designing for the web, but we definitely we didn't have necessarily as sharp of a point of view. And it was sort of just trying to take on any work that we could. And we were getting started.
Things were
And
simpler.
yeah, it
I
was
remember
simpler in some ways.
it was. You had enough time to launch a mattress brand,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
I launched a shelving brand, so things were definitely simpler.
Yeah. And we were going the whole sort of full home goods thing there.
Yeah, we could have kitted out a bedroom.
Yep. Yep. Well, cool. Let's get into it. I'd love to hear from you. What do you see as the role of CRO, and specifically as it relates to marketing sites? Because CRO kind of came from conversion rate optimization, came from more of like e-com. So what does it mean for, your standard marketing site?
Yeah, we've actually been doing something really interesting lately. Sort of like we've been doing a little while, but like it wasn't from the beginning of when we started CRO, that I think adds a little bit of color to how it works differently potentially with marketing sites than it would for e-commerce. And that is adding in a bunch of extra data that's not typically built into like an A/B testing tool.
Hmm.
And the reason that I think that is part of how CRO is different for a marketing site than an e-commerce site is because a lot of the times what you're measuring on marketing sites is engagement. Like the time to convert on marketing sites is often, if you're talking about like B2B SaaS or, whatever other B2B, mostly working with B2B stuff, but the time to convert, like the time to sale, I guess, is really long, can be up to a year. So like if you're just trying to see like how many people click a button in their session, you're not really getting a very big picture of what you're actually growing and optimizing with the website. There's much more like stuff that you can sort of tweak and optimize to get people to engage more, come back more, and maybe even like shorten the timeline to convert at the end. It's kind of an iceberg or a funnel in a way. Meaning that like we're trying to optimize all the way from the top of the funnel all the way through to conversion, not just that last step. So yeah, I think it's a lot about adding in a bunch of ways to measure how people are engaging. Like, how many different pages are they visiting when if they see this variant versus this variant? Does it change the way that they interpret the rest of the content on the site? How long are they? How much longer are they spending on the website if they've seen a variant versus another variant? And that's stuff that's going to be important in e-commerce, but it can skew like much more important on a marketing site instead.
Yeah. And I think the role of the marketing site has started to change as well, where for a long time it was more of like a brand asset and maybe somewhat of a sales brochure, but
Yeah.
not necessarily something that fit into the sales cycle in a more deliberate way. And, it's like, well, you got leads and some of them are good and some of them not. And you just kind of took your chances from there. Um,
That's a good point too. I didn't think to mention that is that when you're doing e-commerce, pretty much all the leads are sales, and so they're all good.
yeah.
I mean, I'm simplifying, but that's pretty much the case with a marketing site where you're generating leads. It can be anywhere from like 1 to 100% good. So we're also working. That's another whole other element. We're also working on optimizing the quality of the leads, not just the quantity. That's like a big deal.
Yeah. And because if you get too many leads that are just bad, then you've got the sales team that's mad at you. And because
Yeah.
they're kind of percentage to close, and it's harder to be able to have truly qualified opportunities. So it starts to create more noise than true signal there.
Yeah. 100%.
Um, how did you, so as you know, we've been building out the CRO group for the last few years. What do you think, for anyone that's listening, like, what was the thing that we learned that was helpful to have us go from, all right, we're doing straight kind of like user experience design to actually trying to now design for conversion, design for revenue?
Um, I think one of the things that was helpful was just coming with the UX perspective. We could sort of grow that into a proportion of a CX perspective, which was
Yep.
fairly intuitive. There were some things to learn, but it was fairly intuitive. And so along with that came um, an approach to strategy that I think was really helpful, because if you're trying to optimize a website and you don't have a strategy, it's almost impossible to find traction unless you get
Yeah.
lucky here or there. But like building up a strategy, we were able to sort of look at it almost in the same way that you might like build out the UX for a site. Like start really high level, find where the biggest pain points are, start to isolate those, but not to the point where you're like you don't, obviously you don't want to jump in and start just like tweaking text on a button if the website from a high level needs optimization. Just like, if, for example, it could even be, the ad campaign copy is not aligning with the landing page copy. And
Mhm.
that's something that you would not really think to look at if you're just jumping in and like tweaking buttons.
Yeah.
Is like, what is the full flow? So it's important to get that really big picture and then optimize sort of like from that like high level down to a much more narrow level as you gain traction at the high level. So I
Yeah.
think it was helpful for us to come with a sort of UX perspective from the beginning.
Yeah, that makes sense. And trying to look at it, because I think one of the things that's a misnomer, it's like Webflow launched Optimize, and really great product that they acquired with a Telemize.
Yeah.
But just going through and doing kind of like A/B testing on copy or buttons and not having something that ladders up to, you might be able to see like a quick hit sort of sugar rush of change. But there's like, I think that really quickly kind of levels off. What have you seen in terms of um, if someone is just trying to get in and do some basics? Are there some basics that anyone, like, let's say you're self-taught or you have a small team, small marketing team. Not everyone has sort of a, really deep UX experience or, things like that. What are some of the basics that people can jump into and start to see an impact and start to see results as they're building out this as like a part of their business?
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned one earlier. It's making sure that there's continuity between the different contexts that your users are experiencing as they go through the funnel. I think that's something that anybody could sort of quickly figure out how to pay attention to. And that's just about communication with the team that's doing the media buys and the team that is collecting all the leads and having to sort those. One thing actually that Webflow is really great about, that because it's integrated, like Webflow Optimize is integrated into Webflow, it's much easier to do higher level testing. And when I say higher level, I just mean like maybe like the structure of a page rather than the text on a button. Because you can be in Webflow and just let's say you've got a bunch of components on a page, you can just sort of resort the page and see if that makes a difference. Obviously, as I was saying before, don't do it willy-nilly, like go in with a strategy. If you're one thing that we use all the time is Microsoft Clarity. There are other tools for it, but it's mostly to like analyze click maps and heat maps and stuff like that. We combine that with the data that you're getting out of Webflow Analyze, and it gets us a really rich picture of how people are behaving on the website. And from there, you can go like, oh, look, everyone's clicking on the very last anchor button, and it's taking them to the bottom of the page because they really want to see this. Well, what happens if I move it to the top? And what happens if I bring in a CTA with that section that takes them to the next step if they're interested in that? So there's stuff that like looking at behavioral data can make that strategic approach, I think, a lot more accessible.
Yeah, that makes sense. And being able to have that full picture and then start to work within the site to see what's working. And you had mentioned the first thing to look at is continuity. And just to kind of unpack that for people, when you're looking at continuity, that's if you're running a brand campaign, don't expect there to be a high level of conversion for something for functional. Is that kind of like what you're talking about?
That's definitely part of it. It's just sort of like having an understanding of the context that is bringing traffic to your website. And if it's a brand campaign, then that traffic you can expect to see a lot of you can expect to see like more bounce in that kind of traffic than you might in a more dedicated campaign to like downloading an asset or converting, because it's higher funnel and you're just like throwing a bunch of people into your homepage. But it's also about making sure that a campaign that you're running, that's like, let's say a retargeting campaign, that the context of that, excuse me, the context of that ad copy, or what the copy says, how it's talking about, let's say the thing that it's asking you to do, is written in the same way, saying the same thing as the landing page does when you click through that ad. So it's just about making sure that someone doesn't click there and go like, what are we talking about now? Or am I even on the right page? So
Yeah.
it's a super simple way to make sure that things are continuous.
Yeah. And probably like an example that I could imagine is you see an ad for download this report, and then you go to the page and then you can't find the report, or there is no
Yeah,
report.
it just
Yep.
takes you to the homepage.
Yeah. And then you're like, the homepage isn't performing, or that then starts to skew maybe
Exactly.
a test that you're trying to run for the homepage.
Yeah,
And yeah,
that exactly. And that's why like it's really convenient, because optimization of a website is really not just about that website for that reason. And in the case when it's a marketing website, also because we're worried about the quality of the leads. So it's like, it's really much broader than that. But that's also the part that's a little bit easier to access without a UX background. It's just
yep,
like making sure there's continuity, and that's gonna help a lot.
yeah. What do you see as the makeup of a team? And maybe look at like what's the makeup of you know, real simple team, and then, maybe like the dream team. Like what do you see as the scale between there? Who should be involved?
Yeah. Well, I think if you have like somebody with a UX background, like a deep UX background, they can cover quite a lot of this. And then at that point, you just need somebody with development experience and some development time just to move some things around in Webflow. And honestly, like if your UX person is comfortable in Webflow, they can kind of do quite a lot of it, because at the sort of like base level, you can analyze data in Clarity that can get you a lot of information. And then you can do like simple stuff in Optimize and basically publish the test.
Yep.
So you could do it as a one person team. Uh, if you wanted a dream team, you wanted to move faster, and you wanted sort of like a lot more data to make decisions from, which can be really helpful at the strategic level. It's just like you can see much further and you can plan ahead a lot farther, and you're working less, like this with the tests
Yep.
that you're running. Having someone that can be sort of dedicated to collecting data and pulling things together, like for example, we're using BigQuery right now to combine data in GA4 with data that we're looking at in Telemize or in Optimize, and that's getting us a lot of information that GA4 by itself won't give us, and Optimize won't give us. But it gets us a way to look at what I was mentioning earlier. That's sort of like, what's the behavioral difference on the site? That's not just they scrolled further, but like for
Yeah.
that long tail behavioral difference. So a data person, a person who is very comfortable in Webflow, a UX person is always helpful, and then like it depends on if you're working for a client, it depends on sort of like how much comfort they have in letting you do that like final design stuff for the test. Like, can I change the color of this button? If they're comfortable with it, then having a designer can be helpful as well in the team.
What do you see as is there a organizational change that has to happen within companies when they're doing this, mostly around maybe approvals or cross-department coordination? How do you get like the company to be in line with doing like, this rapid-paced CRO type of practice?
Yes, that's a challenge. um, I think it's a lot about sort of differentiating the reason for decision making and also the end goal of the test. So, like let's say one of the challenging scenarios might be that you are either in a company or you're doing work for a company that everyone is sort of very protective of the silos that they're contributing to individually, and maybe there's some like disparate operations between those different groups. Um, Making sure that you're sort of communicating that the real goal of testing is to get data, not to make changes to what they have. And getting the data is allowing you to sort of move forward, get more data, but also start allowing them and enabling them to make decisions based on that data. So that can be really helpful. And I think that might have been it. I'm trying to think of, I felt like I had another reason, but I lost it for now.
Yeah. So if you were to re-summarize what you just said, getting the data isn't about pushing a change. It's about getting enough of an insight to be able to make a decision on the change.
Yeah.
And that there can sometimes be defensiveness between different departments because it's like, this is design. Why are you messing with my design? But it's like, no, we're working with the design so that we can make the design better or copy or like whatever. It's not that we don't like the headline. It's that we want to be able to see how that headline works in relation to this whole other larger world that we're pushing out.
Yeah, and it's not even that we want to make the design better, even though we don't want to make it worse. It's more about making sure that the intent of the design is actually ending up in a way that performs best for the people that are on the site. So I think it's that. Man, I lost I had another second one and I forgot it again. But yeah,
that's how it goes. What do you see as the biggest blocker for teams to kind of adopt this?
That's a good question.
And to be fair for anyone that's listening, I didn't send questions out to Zane ahead of time. That would have been really awesome.
Just this is the one I pre-read. No, I think the biggest blocker, it can be really challenging to convince somebody that's worth to go down this path if they don't have their own. It's kind of an explanation. If they don't have their own data telling them that it's a good idea to run tests to get data, then it's hard to convince them that like going down this path will get them that thing. But it's funny because that's exactly the scenario of why you need to do testing in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a maybe business size or segment of business where this doesn't make sense, where there's just not enough maybe traffic or ad spend, or, what is it? What do you think is the threshold for when, like, yep, you're sending enough traffic where this program's going to pay for itself, or no, like these incremental increments you're making aren't really going to change the needle? What do you think is that threshold?
Uh, like an actual number, it's hard to say an actual number because you can do some things to try and like wiggle around getting significant, like statistical significance when you're running tests by adding additional data, sort of like I talked about a couple of times now, that can help you make decisions. But really, like, if there's not enough traffic coming to the site, you're going to be able to make much better improvement by just making sure the site is following best practices when it comes to UX and design for marketing websites,
Yeah.
and trying to optimize for, let's say, a site that gets, I don't know, I'm going to lowball, but like 1,000 visitors a month and only 5 very valuable conversions. It's really hard to optimize for that, because even if you made it like add 50% in a month, now you're only up to like 7.5, right? Uh, any number of those 2.5 conversions could have been accidental, because it's the number, the like total number is so small that the math just isn't enough proof to help you actually make any real decisions. So when the traffic volume is low and the conversion percentage is also very low, it can be really difficult. Yeah.
So I just jumped over to LinkedIn. I put it on mute or whatever. It looks like we got some people that have joined. So just want to give a shout out to Victor, Bogdan, Petard, Jamie. So yeah, it looks like we got a good little crew in there. Got some people coming in late. If there's any questions or kind of curveballs that anyone wants to throw to Zane, don't hesitate. We've got a couple minutes here. And yeah, maybe as we're kind of closing out, how do you see the relationship between CRO and now getting into like AEO?
AEO is really interesting, and I think it's interesting maybe in a way that I don't know if everybody's thinking about it this way. I think a lot of people are thinking about it as like an alternative to organic search, people coming in.
Yep.
I sort of think about it like a distant version of your own website that you only barely have control over, because it's like somebody else's, it's in a like glass box that somebody else owns the key to, and you're just trying to make it work like somehow with magic through that glass box. That's what it kind of feels like. So what ends up happening, the effect of that, is that people can do a lot of their discovery and comparison and validation before they even look at your site at all. So you have to make sure that you have all of as many of the LLMs telling as much of your story how you want it to be told, so that you can almost make like a facsimile of your own website and your own story in somebody else's yard. Sorry to mix those metaphors.
That's all right.
But yeah, I think that's what's really interesting about AEO. So like, there's part of it is like optimizing. They're both optimization, right? So you're just sort of like optimizing everything to make sure that you're reducing friction, telling your story the way it needs to be told, making everything easy to use, easy to find, that kind of thing. But the other thing that's happening is like, you're getting, when people finally make it to your website from that other person's yard, they've already made like a much deeper decision than if they get there from search. So the context that they're coming in from is significantly different. They're already more committed because they've made the decision at a much later point to visit your website. And so the kind of things that you can optimize for with that audience is potentially pretty different than an audience that's just being thrown in from ads.
Yeah. And it starts to cut off some of that early discovery that can sometimes happen within a site, but it doesn't mean that you should remove that discovery from the site. In fact, like, you need to be able to have that be even more clear, more sort of segmented in terms of like the types of questions and jobs to be done that you're looking to address. And I know that recently we were on a call with a group and they were talking about why they didn't want to have like a comparison page of their product to other products.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I thought was really good that you brought up here, like, well, that comparison is going to happen no matter what. it's better if you write about it rather than your competitors. Because then what's going to happen, because these models are, quite frankly, a little gullible, they're not going to have the sort of wisdom to know what's like, oh no, these guys are just totally lying all the time. They'll just think like, oh, well, I mean, your competitor says that they're better, so they obviously must be better.
Yeah.
And then people start thinking of that as the source of truth, just as they've thought about search rankings as that source of truth. So yeah, it's definitely,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a wild world. And I think user experience and, brand story, it's almost like those things matter even more now, because it's thinking about the broader reach of the user experience, and then brand story being not what we say about ourselves, but what other people and now entities are saying about, our company or our brand.
Yeah, yeah. I actually am like really liking that other person's yard analogy now, because I'm thinking
Yeah.
about like if I don't know, they could even be like political yard signs or whatever. But if you don't have one and all your neighbors have political yard signs talking about how your favorite politician is the worst, then like that's the story. There's nobody countering it, right? So you have to make sure that you sort of cover all the topics, because as you said, yeah, they're going to be covered by somebody else, and then you don't get to tell the truth.
Yeah. Um, cool. Well, any other things you're thinking about or something you'd want to kind of add to the conversation? We're coming up on time here.
Man, open question. Um, no, I mean, I think there's so much stuff to talk about when it comes to AEO and also with CRO. It's sort of like they're both like AEO's like obviously rapidly evolving because it's so new. CRO is also very quickly evolving, and I think I don't know. I think like let's just keep that dialogue going, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. Hard to do it in 30 minutes.
Yeah. What do you think would be a good next topic area? What would be like two or three?
One or two or three.
I don't
Let's
know.
see.
Yeah, you could do
Uh,
one, two, or three.
one, two, or three. Yeah. Let's see. I think I do think having another AEO chat, like I know we did talk about AEO, but like maybe talking a little bit more about the mechanics of AEO would
Mm,
be a good chat, because it sort of helps you understand the theory side that you guys already you covered in a previous
yep.
talk. Um, I think trying to think about other topics with CRO that you could cover in 30 minutes is kind of tricky. I think that we could talk about sort of like how to go from testing at an architecture level versus testing at an element or like a component level. That could be an interesting topic.
And something else I was thinking about is maybe like what's the follow the bouncing ball? Like what's the process look like? From that first,
Yeah.
discovery meeting, and then just how does that all kind of start to line up? Because I mean, I've seen your slides, and there's like 3 slides, and each slide has like 5 different things on it. And so it's not just like, oh, do some research and start testing. I mean, you want to have like an understanding of your customer and where cleaning up the data, like all of this stuff.
Yeah. I think the process, it can vary.
And
It can
sure,
vary
sure.
sort of like length. If really like if you're in GA4 and you're wanting to optimize for like a broader set of data than just clicks on a page, yeah, you have to make sure the data is clean, and you have to make sure that it's complete, so that you can that way what's the first test to run.
Yep.
That kind of data helps you get there. From there, it's kind of about selecting the both sort of a combination of the low hanging fruit and the highest level of impact, and then making sure that you sort of like using a marketing website best practices to weigh against what's currently there and how people are interacting. And then the other part would be like go look at some competitors and analogs and precedents and see how their pages are set up, and basically come up with a hypothesis. And the hypothesis, basically you would say, what's the highest level change that we could hypothesize making an impact. That might be moving some things around on the page, or maybe changing even where the page lives in the nav or in the sitemap, and then all the way down to text on a button. So you go from like, where is it in the architecture? What's the, are we using tabs, or are we using like a scroll component? And then what's the image? What's the copy in there? And then finally, like, what's the button? And I'm not saying you have to
Sure.
test in that order, but
Yep.
it's generally like broad to narrow if you have that much runway for testing.
Cool. Yeah, well, maybe what we could do is all of that. And I think those are all like great topics. And I would say to anyone that's listening, if there's something specific that you or your team or your company are kind of thinking about, love to be able to use that as a way for us to build a better kind of stream here, build a better kind of thing that um, you know, we can start to share like what we've learned so far, and also be able to get feedback from what other people are seeing. So cool. Well, Zane, good to hang out with you this afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon. I'm going to go and build a stick fort in a little bit with my son. So that's probably the biggest thing I'm looking forward to.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. And thanks to everybody who joined.
Cool. Awesome. Good to see everyone. Bye.
Bye.